Today's topic is Dropdown Controls, Date Pickers, and Sliders. Today's webinar will be presented by Alexey Grinevich, a senior software developer at Inflectra. He holds a doctorate in applied mathematics and has been working in the IT industry for the past 20 years. For the last 10 years, his major interests have been automated testing, legacy APIs, and desktop system testing. My name is Teresa, and I'll be your moderator today. Before I turn it over to Alexey, let's cover a few housekeeping issues. First, today's webinar will last for about an hour and will consist of both a theoretical and practical part and end with a Q&A session. We ask that you save your questions until that time and use the built-in questions tab to send these questions. They will be then read out and answered. Second, today's webinar will be recorded. In a couple of days, we'll make the webinar recording available on Inflectra's YouTube channel under the playlist called UI Automation 101. Links to each webinar recording will be emailed to you in a few days after the live webinar, or you can subscribe to Inflectra's YouTube channel to get notified when new recordings become available. To give you a little more information about the webinar series as a whole, UI Automation 101 is a 5-part series focusing on different aspects of UI design. A key component to successful test automation is understanding and aligning the UI interaction points and capabilities with the test automation tool's strengths. During this 5-part series, we will focus on specific aspects of UI design. This series is running in parallel with our webinar series titled MS Dynamics UI Testing. This UI Automation 101 series is an excellent companion to that series. For those of you not familiar with our test automation webinars, we recommend that you check out our 2 previous series, Test Automation Demystified and Planet Test Automation. First steps, both available on our YouTube channel. Last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, each webinar in the series has a practical part. We will demonstrate the key practical test automation concepts using Inflectra's own platform, Rapise. If you haven't downloaded the tool yet, please visit www.inflectra.com/Rapise and feel free to use Inflectra's 30-day free trial. And with the housekeeping issues out of the way, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Alexey.
Thank you, Teresa. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone, I'm Alexey, and let's proceed to our today's topic. So, in the title for this webinar, we mention 3 types of controls: drop-downs, date pickers, and sliders. And is there anything common between these 3 kinds of controls? Actually, they do look differently. They behave differently. Although when we have one of these, or all of them, or some of them in our application, we have to deal with them. And the way how we deal with them and what problems do we solve while we try to interact with them is very common between these 3. That's why we will consider all of them together. The purpose of this webinar series 101 is to look at the automation from an unusual angle, because usually when we do automation, we have some particular application that we deal to, and we are focusing on this application alone, on the problems of this application alone. And we don't usually have time to somehow climb up and look from the bird's eye view on the situation itself, on the common things we have between application and so on. And the purpose of this webinar is to try to do this together with you. So we have these 3 types of controls, and first of them is drop down. At this point, I will switch camera off, and I will start demonstrating some live applications on the screen. So it's better to have only one screen shared. Okay, so drop downs. The best example of drop down, most commonly visible in day-to-day work, is a menu. So basic menu and more advanced menu. And what's the trick with this menu? The trick with this kind of control is that its focus, its input focus, is very, very fragile. It's very easy to lose it. So once I have a menu shown up, any action, my movement away immediately affects what's happening on the screen. Even if I didn't click anything, even if I just moved my mouse away, this control reacts. That's why it's hard to deal with such type of controls using some inspector or investigation tools, simply because trying to work with any other tool immediately closes this menu. So I have menu open, I try to launch some kind of spy. So while I'm in this tracking mode, it's still visible, but once I click something or press on something to stop tracking, and try to interact with the spy, the menu disappears, its properties gets changed, so it's hard to deal with. And this is just one of the examples of pop-up controls. Another very remarkable feature is nested menu. So here we have menu with sub-menu. And what happens if I try to go to restore default zoom? Depending on the path I choose to go, the result would be different. So if I go to zoom, then move mouse to right to keep this zoom focused while I'm moving, and then move down, then I may reach this element. If I try to go directly and do it not really fast, then you see this sub menu. So if I do quickly, I may reach this sub menu. If I go slowly, I may lose sub value, so I hit nothing. And this is a tricky part, and this make a problem dealing with input focus. Another specific feature that we may also see here is value. So when we deal with menus, it's more or less easy to interact or to click somewhere. Usually, if you just record something like edit, replace, this action will be easily recorded by Rapis. So it's easy to do this action. But what happens if you have to, for example, check the value, or you need to ensure some value? In this case, you need to read this state, and in this case, you need to somehow recognize this object while it is on the screen, because once menu goes away, there is nothing on the screen, nothing in the memory in many cases, and you have no place to read this value for. So you need to show it, you need to learn this object, and you need to know how to get value from it. We already considered such an example in another webinar that we had previously. It is first webinar in this series. It's about working with navigation and menus, and we tried this example of setting value in this pop-up menu and reading value with pop-up menu. Although we are talking about pop-up menus, our general topic here is drop-down controls. And once we talk about drop-down controls, there are many other examples where we have similar situations. So in this case, it's the Dynamics nav. We have plenty of drop-down controls that are shown depending on the place where I'm trying to enter value. So like currency code shows the list box. Sales type is simple drop-down list. And this one is a date picker. We will talk about date pickers a bit later. But with all of these controls, we have this common feature that the focus gets easily lost. So it's sometimes hard to learn or verify and read properties from that control, because this control is only in memory and contains properties while it is visible. Once it is closing, nothing is here. And if we deal with SPY, again, we have to use keyboard shortcuts. That's why keyboard is so important overall when we have drop downs. And it's a generic and most common solution for situations like this one. We will not be doing anything with nav right now. We will proceed to some summary. So with drop down, we have these specific features. First of all is input focus. It's very important to keep it under control to be able to deal with it. And it's really elusive. It's really easy to lose it. It's hard to investigate internals of this control. And again, you may visit our webinar on menu automation, where we have live example on how we do this in a really tricky situation. Also, if we have a value, it's more or less easy to set it, but it may be really tricky to read it from this pop-up control, unless there is some workaround provided. So, for example, with nav, we may consider this page as a good example, because even while we have these drop downs, we don't have to deal with them, and we have values of selected values available here as plain text. It makes it much easier to input test values, to read current value, to change the date without dealing with this fragile drop-down controls. So in many cases, good applications provide several input methods for any field. So we may choose, and in these cases, we may find a workaround like in this case. So that are good news for some cases. Next example is a date picker. Date picker is really specific drop-down control, and it's worth considering separately. We already had 2 webinars touching this topic. We investigated a couple of drop-down controls. So here we will just somehow summarize it as a part of today's speech. So here we have date picker available. And again, besides the date picker, we have an input field where we may interact with this control explicitly. So if we can, we of course should use this control. But how to set a value? Let me show you the keyboard. So I want to input value, and in this case, the value is formatted. So I have January, and for example, I want to put April here. What happens if I type April? You see, I'm typing. So this is on screen keyboard. It's actually doing typing, but nothing is happening. What I can do, I may try to press arrow keys, and in this case, control reacts. It's switching between different months. But so if I want to select April, I have to know which month is currently selected in this control, right? Because I just have these arrow buttons. Luckily, if I continue my investigations, I may find that if I press home, it always switches months to January. So if I want to select April, I need to click home once, and then switch to next month 4 times. 1, No, this is not switch to next month. So again, switch to click January and click home. What was it? Interesting. So it was some side effect. Again, I'm in January because I click home, and now I hit up button. February, March, April. So 3 times up brings me to April. Then I may hit cursor button, again hit home, and this home, in this time, home brings me to the first date of month. So if I want to set like April 15, I hit home and then hit wrong button, and again home and hit up 15 times. Again, and year, I will leave this year. So that's it. So this is how I may interact with this control. You see that I was unable to do typing here. So this is like something that making this control a bit tricky. So it's not as simple as just set text and set predefined date like I had right here. So here I may just put the date I want and that's it. So that's an ideal situation. With this example, we have a bit different format, so it's a bit harder to deal with. Another example, interesting example of a date picker and date selector is the one we have here in Windows. Again, first of all, it features the pop-up nature. So if I click elsewhere, it disappears. Luckily, I have this place where I may read current value, but I cannot set it from here. I may only set it by selecting a date. Now let's see what's happening. What will happen to this control if I just try to use arrow keys? So my click is working, but the only thing it's able to do is to scroll this widget a bit, but it doesn't change date. If we compare it to this drop-down control, so we show it, and when we click on it, we may select different dates. So up and down changes the current week, left, right is switching between dates, home end goes to beginning and end of month, and page up, page down is switching between consequent months. So there are a number of useful controls that may allow me to select any desired date by doing this consequence of keystrokes. As I remember, Control Up shows me month view, so I may quickly select the month from this view. Another Control Up would show me the year's view, so I may just pick the year, like 2016, for example, using keyboard like that. Then I may hit Control down and choose the month I want, like July, hit Control down and choose the day I need, like whatever. So there are a number of ways. So when we deal with this control, the focus is not here. So it's again the topic of focus. So even if I try to click somewhere, the keyboard input is consumed by the panel and not by this the calendar panel. So how to deal with that? We may try to somehow give focus to it. So in many cases, clicking somewhere on the control gives it the focus. So I'm clicking on the side, so outside of the button, trying to do something, but nothing happens. What happens if I click on the date itself? So after I click on the date, it actually got input focus, and now I may use it as any other control using page up, page down. So pretty whole set of standard calendar control operations are available, and all common keyword, you see, the combinations are working, like control up, control down, selection of date, and so on. So I may work with it, but in general, I cannot interact with this control unless I click on the currently selected date. So getting the focus here is really a tricky task. I tried to deal with this control. I tried to click on various places. And so whatever I try to do, I either change current value, because if I just click here, I set year. So I cannot just randomly click in the middle, because this would change current value, and I need to know what is current value. And in this case, I have to find currently available value to just give focus to this control. So this is a tricky place. Luckily, we don't usually need to change Windows time this way, and there are other ways for doing so, but it's a good example on how tricky simple control could be. So it's just a good example of how things may be complicated for automated testers. Sometimes we are getting focus to the control by using tab. So in regular input field, if I hit tab, I get from one input control to the next one. So I may travel between form field this way. So if for some reason I don't want to click here, because if this control says some fragile parts, what I need to do, I need to select previous control. So if I wanted to select sales type, but I couldn't click here, I would click on date and use tab. Sometimes the control I need is first one, so I cannot find previous control. It's the first one. So what I may do, I may click on the next one, like this sales type, and there is another common keyboard combination, Shift and Tab. And in this case, I return the keyboard focus returns to previous control. And so even if it's the first one and I cannot click on it, I may select second one and jump back to the first one. So that's a useful trick you may use. Okay, so with date pickers, we have the following common troubles or features. Again, maybe same trouble with input focus. It's sometimes hard to put focus to the control, to set focus to the control. It may have a really complex structure, so it's both hard to read current value and it's hard to set desired value. And the third thing is the value of this control may be implicit. And here I have another example. It's a PhotoViewer application. It has this filtering calendar. I may select the date which I want to use for filtering. There are no albums, it's just a bit fake application, but good example of this control. So I may select something here by using mouse, of course. What happens if I use keyboard? Let me show you. So even if this control is selected, I explicitly click on it. I try to use standard shortcuts. This control is not getting input focus. So we are in trouble. Let me try to look at this. So we cannot use keyboard, and this is really bad news for this control. Let me create a new test where I will work with this control. So I'm going to investigate this control using the standard UI automation SPI. So I'm tracking, I'm pointing to it, I'm hitting stop tracking using keyboard, Control G. So what I see here, it's a pane. Luckily, it doesn't hide when I click on the SPI. So this is good. But unfortunately, looking through this list of available properties, I can see the name of control, its start date, but there is no place where current value is reflected because it's not exposed using given technology. So usually it has value pattern and value is somewhere here, but it's empty. So my selection is not exposed through this property, and I don't know which date is currently selected. So in this case, the last resort, last thing we may do is to access it using its native technology. We know that it is a managed application, Windows Forms, and we have special type of support for that. We have special libraries in Rupees, so it's called Managed Library, and we have Managed SPI that I may try to use here. Same thing, start tracking, point to this control, stop tracking. You may see, Control G to stop tracking, okay. Oh, it was UI automation SPI, sorry, two SPIs on the same time. So automation was intercepting the keystroke. Okay, stop tracking. Two SPIs are bad. Again, start and manage SPI while no other SPIs here. Start tracking, hover, Control G to stop tracking. And here is my control. So I may see that there are other properties exposed through managed technology and through managed library. And among that properties, one is called date time, where I can see currently selected date in this control. So using managed technology, I may both read its value and set its value. So there is a UI API way to deal with this. So workaround is available. We are not going to work with this, but yeah, I just demonstrated that sometimes you need to try different type of approaches and SPIs. And while others and common ones are not working, there is one that is working. In this case, we are lucky. And the more different approaches we know, the more chances that we will be lucky and find the good one. So in general, when we deal with date picker and we need to read a value, it's good practice if we read value not from the picker itself, but from the other place. In this case, there is an input field where we may simply access the value of the picker control. Otherwise, we have to try different technologies and approaches. As I said, we already worked with this control a couple of times, and there are two webinars held before. One of these was last summer, and we called it Friends and Fools or Software Test Automation. We were demonstrating a date picker implemented in Material UI. So there is a link to this webinar recording. You may find this information there. And also we considered another date picker, which is available in Salesforce. And it was a part of Test Automation Demystified webinar series. And again, there is a link to this webinar recording. You may easily find it on YouTube. and have a look if you're interested. So now we switch into our next target, which is a slider control. And to be frank, slider is not looking something similar in any sense to what we considered before. Although, let's look in more details at what we have. So let me find an application with slider. So this one is a good example. And when we look at this slider control, the first question we have is, what is the current value? We are changing some value from something to something. We set some value here. So what is current value? How to set specific value? So how to deal with this control? And so this is what we are going to talk about right now. So to explain why I think this slider is not really good, I want you to show another slider, which we have in our Windows system to control the voice volume. The good part of it is that in addition to the tracker, where I may use mouse to change value, there is a text representation of current volume level. So when I want to get current value, I don't need to somehow distinguish it from this tracker bar. I may simply read it from here. So this is good design. Now let's again look at this slider and check what we have here, how we may operate with it. Where is my keyboard? Here it is. So here is my slider. First of all, I want to set focus on it, keyboard focus. I'm setting it here just by clicking on it and trying if it reacts to keyboard operations. And luckily, I see that clicking on it actually changes the value. And if I click left, right, it increases or decreases. If I click up, down, okay, the same is happening. And let me try page up, page down, usual operations. You see it's increasing, but in like bigger chunks. And home simply returns value to the beginning, and end set the slider to the maximum value. Let me try it with Windows. Do we have the same? So the same is actually happening here. So this approach is more or less universal. Let me try page up, page down. In this case, it's not working. So this shortcut is not available for this control. But again, this control luckily has current value, which is again good for it and for us if we need to deal with it. Okay, another important note is I want to set keyboard focus. How can I set it? If I just click on the middle of the control, just like with this date picker, it changes the value. I cannot click without changing the value. I try to click in the corners. So any click that actually brings focus to this control actually changes its value, except one use case where I click on the tracker itself. In this case, I actually set focus, so it accepts my input. So let me remove focus, then click here once, and then use cursor case. So I can see that focus is actually here because it reacts to my keyboard input. But the only way to put focus to this control to be able to operate with it without changing current value. Sometimes I don't need to change value. So the only way to do this is to click on the tracker bar. So that's something similar to what we see here, and again, it's one of common parts. Another is the value. So what's the value of this slider? Let me create new test and try to deal with this slider control. It would be local test, and they'll call it VPF slider desktop test. Let it be RVL. So let me, I don't want to use managed. I know it's not managed. I want to use UI automation technology here. So let me start tracking. I don't need this application. I hit Control G to start tracking. Hover mouse here. And you see, I cannot select the whole control. I only see parts of it. So, okay, fine. Let me click on part. It's a thumb. And if I go to its parent, I see the whole slider. So the only way to reach this whole slider is to climb in the spy tree to appropriate element. So this is the whole slider. And if I check the properties of this whole slider, I may find that it contains minimum, maximum, and current value. So with this particular slider, I may read its value using this value property. And I may actually set it using this value property. I just know it because I tried it before this webinar. Also, what's good about this slider control is that RPS knows about it. So we don't, if we have it during recording, this application, it actually knows that I'm setting value and it records corresponding action right here. So it records do set value and different values. If I want to, for example, set this slider to minimum value, I may use this API and read get max value. This method is available. I may simply see it here, get min value, get max value. And then I may do slider. Do set value. Do set value. And value is the result of get max value, so it's variable last result. So if I play this script, it should finally put this slider to the rightmost position. So we're lucky. This is the easy case, and we may interact with it. And but in the real world, we have to deal with unexpected applications and with not really such supported, with some custom controls. And here is another example. This is OpenUI5 library. It has plenty of slider styles right here. What's it doing? It's frozen. Give it a bit. It's waiting for site. So here, first of all, we may see different types of sliders. So typical thing is sometimes slider may have tick marks like here. Why is it so slow? In this case, the value changes between these tick marks. looks like the browser is not really responsive, or this virtual machine is not responsive. Okay, it takes my clicks with delay. I just clicked here and waiting what will happen. Looks like I have some troubles connecting to this virtual machine. In this case, it's better to if you encounter similar situation when you're doing automated testing, the worst case you may do is try to click everywhere or to change something or to fix. You need to better to wait for it to have some reaction on your action. Okay, I scrolled up to this element, and right now I want to work with this slider because I want to first of all investigate it using inspector. I'm hitting right click and choosing inspect. And this is the shortest one. And since I want to again try keyboard and demonstrate, I want it to fit on the screen. So this short one is perfect for my purpose. Okay, so we have this slider. If I try to click around it, I may just to set focus. What I will notice is that I have the same trouble as I have with desktop slider. I cannot set focus to this slider control without changing its value. So it won't react to anything. It just got my click on this place. If I click here, I changed value, and now I may actually interact with it. I'm clicking on right arrow, and it increases value a bit. But there is no way to click on it somewhere on it without changing its value. So the tracker immediately jumps to the place where I clicked. So the only safe way to get focus is to either use keyboard tab to jump from previous control, or to click directly on this tracker. So, or thumb as it's called in VPF. Let me try to find where this thumb is. So this is the whole slider. So my goal is to find the thumb and to find current value. So what's the current value? Luckily, I see there is some kind of title shown when I hover over this element. But where is it stored? So it's not in the properties of this parent control, although it has ID slider. So definitely it's a root of my slider control. Has some inner property which contains the track bar over which the thumb is moving. So this is the left part of the tracker, and here I may see indication of the current value because the width of the left progress bar, left one, you see it's darker than right one, and it has width 25%. So it consumes 25% of the whole bar. So current value is 25% between minimum and maximum. Anyway, let me try where this title is stored, and I may see it here. So the hint that's shown is stored here in the title. So this is an explicit value. Let me try to change current value. Oh, no focus. Again, click on it to set focus. Current value 23. I click on the button, and every time I click, this title changes and the width is changing. You see, so there is a way on how to get the value of the control. And if I look more here, I may find there is a property called area value now. So it looks like the most appropriate for a reading value, current value of the control. So this is the way how I plan to get the value. So let me just demonstrate how I planned to work here in this case. I'm closing the spice since this is a web library. I am creating new test which will use web technology, local, OpenUI slider, web, and Chrome will be my browser right now. It will be RVL. So I want to first learn the control I need. And since I know that the slider as a whole has no values that are interesting for me, and also I plan to use keyboard to interact with it, and I need just to click on this stamp to get focused. So everything I need to learn is this span, this stamp. I don't need to learn the whole slider control. It's useless. Everything interesting is right here. So just using record learning rupees, record. Since there are many parts in this control, and I want to pick up required one, I would better use Rapist Spy to select the node to represent this slider. Hit Control T, select it, hit Control T again. So just make sure that I have the thumb itself selected. So it has the property area value now. So this is what I need. So I double click on it to have its XPath here, and I do learn. It's learned as its value 28. I want to rename it to slider right now, and I finish. So I learned single object for this slider thumb, and I want to read its value. So my object is here, slider, and to read its value, I need to get its attribute area value now, and there is a method for that. So DOM get attribute, area value now, and I may output it to the report, tester, message, slider value, and actual value is a result of this operation, variable last result. Saving and playing. So slider value is 28. This is what I read. Now I want to set some specific value, and let me define variable with desired value. Variable slider value number like 55, for example. So my plan is I will click on this slider to thumb, and this is actually slider thumb. Slider, do click. So now I have focus set on it. Now I plan to hit home to revert this slider to the 0 value, and then press right key as many times as needed to set desired value. So what I'm going to do is, after click on the thumb, and after I know I have focus, I do global do send keys, and I'm sending home key. And this should simply reset my slider to 0. Let me simply play it to make sure it works as expected. I set focus and I reverted to 0. Now I need to write home the required number of times. We have a loop here, loop, and loop type would be variable. Call it like iterator, from 1 to slider value. So variable slider value. So it would be 55 in this case. And here I simply need to do global, do send keys, right arrow. So this should set my slider back value to 55. So I may simply, after doing this loop, I may simply repeat this step, reading a real value now. It actually shows this return value, so I will see it in the report, and it should be 55. So let me hit play, and let's see what we have. Currently, it has value 0. You see, then it sends keystrokes until it is reaching the value 55, and final value is 55. So this was like live demonstration on how we may deal with such tricky controls in such situations, using keyboard, using proper focus operations, and so on. Let's go and finalize. So again, common thing about sliders is it may be tricky to get focus, and this is common with date picker. It's common with menus. It has keyboard input, and it has rich keyboard input features, and we may use it to set value. The value may be not so easy to get, so we may need to use some implicit method to read value. It's better, and sometimes it's better and easier to read value from other sources, just like here it's with volume control, is field next to volume control, rather than trying to detect it using other methods. And the value may be not the value we expect, it may be some internal value for the tracker. So the example we considered is here, and let's summarize the whole knowledge we got today. So with keyboard focus, it's important to find good focal point where we may use to set focus. If that's not available, we have to use tab, or sometimes we may only use shift tab to get input focus. To read the value from the control, it's good if we have value property. If it's not available, try different technologies to find the value, or sometimes we simply cannot detect the value, but we may make sure that some value is there by simply setting it. So we may set specific value, but we cannot read it. It's again another valid method for ensuring. And to set value, if we have text representation like with date fields in NEF, we should use that. Otherwise, we should use value property. Otherwise, we have to choose different technologies to set the value. Otherwise, try to use keyboard shortcuts. Otherwise, deal with available mouse input buttons, like next month, previous month, next week, previous week, and so on. So if it's the first is the simplest one, but if it's not available, we should check others. And summary, just to summarize, because I need to somehow finish this speech. So what is common? If we check these three types of controls and these three types of typical problems, we cannot say that there are exactly same problems. So sometimes some things are a bit easier with drop down or with slider, and a bit harder with drop down, and vice versa. But it may depend on particular controls. And in general, you may see that there are problems with each of these cells in general. So they may be easily solvable. They may be more hard to solve. Sometimes we have special support for that in the library. In this case, we're happy. But overall, we have these three specific types of problems, and that are common for these three specific types of controls. And what's the most interesting, that the solutions we use to deal with that controls and to overcome these problems are similar. That's why we consider them together. So it's good if we have a test framework, and we provide many test frameworks with RPs. In this case, these troubles are already solved for you. It's good if there is a built-in library like the one for VPF, and library knows about these specific controls. Otherwise, we have to deal with workarounds, and I hope the tricks and methods I shown today were useful for you to survive in the situations like we considered today. So that's the end of my today's talk. Thank you for attention. Teresa, I pass my word to you.
Thank you so much, Alexey. That was a great presentation. It looks like we have a couple of minutes. Let's just check and make sure if we have any questions. And I'll invite my colleague, Dennis, to assist with those questions.
Thank you, Teresa. We do have one question. Is there any playlist on YouTube where I can view all the 101 videos in one place?
Yeah, sure. So there are playlists. There is Inflectra, you may, as a publisher, and there you may find playlists for each of webinar series we have. So we have for dynamics and for UI automation, and with all for older series that that I mentioned today, and that were recorded previously. So for each webinar series, we have a playlist. You may go there and find corresponding webinars. I hope that helps.
Great, thank you. So far, we don't have any more questions. Teresa?
Okay, great. Thank you again to Alexey for today's presentation. We'll send out an email in a couple of days with a link to the recording of the webinar. We hope that you'll join us for the next webinar in the series, and that will be titled UI Automation 101, 7 Little Known Ways to Leverage RVL. That webinar is scheduled for Wednesday, May 13th at 10 a.m. If you're interested in the companion MS Dynamics UI testing series, please plan to attend the third in that series called How to Test MS Dynamics 365 for Sales Through the UI Like a Pro. And that will be airing on Wednesday, April 29th at 10 a.m. Until then, thank you to Dennis. Thank you to Alexey.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching.